Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unleashed. My plan for this episode was to continue our discussion about the 22 election, but another school tragedy hit Denver last week and again this week in Nashville, and we need to talk about it. In 1999, I remember vividly sitting on a cafe patio about to start a round of golf at Kennedy Golf Course. I was watching the horrific images of Columbine High School then flash on the TV. It was really hard to process what was going on, something so tragic happening right here in my home state. Well, fast forward almost 14 years later to 2012. I was sitting in a class and my phone began to vibrate. Another violent tragedy was unfolding in Sandy Hook, Connecticut. Enough of these tragedies were happening that it wasn't shocking to hear the first report, but as the details unfolded, and being a mom, it became unbearable. This event shook me to the core. First graders, almost babies, and teachers giving their lives to protect the little ones. It was evil. I thought of my own twin babies at home, my toddler Holly, my high schooler Tori. It made my chest tighten up and my heart just broken. At that point, I was CEO of my pet care franchise, Camp Bow Wow, and we had locations across the continent. I knew the healing power of our furry friends, so I called some folks in leadership in the Sandy Hook community. And I offered to bring service dogs, emotional support dogs, to help with the trauma. Our team deployed and spent a week in the community with several loving pups. But when we got home, our hearts knew we had to do more to help. We put together a plan to train a few service dogs and to raise the money to do so, to live in the Sandy Hook community, to be there for the children, to help them heal. We spent more time in Sandy Hook and got to know the wonderful people there. I became friends with a mother while we were there doing this work, Nicole Hockley. Nicole lost her beautiful 6-year-old son, Dylan, on that dark day and had another older son, Jake, dealing with the trauma of not just being in the building when it happened, but also losing his little brother. Nicole would help found Sandy Hook Promise, an organization that is helping children find connection and hope across the world now. I wanted to bring the lessons that Nicole and her foundation were learning about how to keep our children safe across America, but especially in Colorado, my home state. I started to meet with the school safety community here and learned as much as I possibly could. Around that same time, my own family was reeling from an assault on my oldest daughter at a high school party in Boulder Valley School District, where she was a student. It was a terrible time for my daughter and for our family. To make it worse, the treatment she received at the hands of the local sheriff and the DA had left even more trauma and confusion. The very people she and our family turned to for help after the assault left all of us questioning just how safe she or any young person in Colorado schools were. There was no transparency, no openness to help. The case never went to trial, even though the boy admitted what he had done in a text message. My daughter also had the physical bruises and scars to prove her story. But the DA, Stan Garnett at the time, didn't pursue the charges. The sheriff wouldn't continue to investigate, and the people up the chain of command, they let us down. Even the school didn't do what it was supposed to do in response to the assault case. She was bullied and had to walk the halls in fear every day until she graduated. The whole system, top to bottom, it let us down. But nothing prepared me for the heartache of watching our government, our justice system, the administrators we had befriended at the school and trusted, all fail my daughter over and over again. I was so naive before this happened. I trusted that our government and local law enforcement would look out for my child until the DA didn't pursue her case and even went as far as to mock me behind my back for being too active of a mom, too engaged, until he accidentally copied me on one of the emails and exposed what he'd been saying behind my back. As you might imagine, that experience enraged me. It caused me to lose all faith in those who are supposed to be there to protect us. It's made me closely examine our government's role in our lives and our school's role in protecting our children, but especially my role as a parent. It woke me up. My daughter's assault and dealing with the crushing disappointment our school and our local justice system dealt with my daughter finally put me over the edge. I had to act. I suddenly got very interested in the role of our government and the relative promises I had always taken for granted as true. I'd always relied on as solid. As a result, I started Moms Fight Back, a nonprofit focused on bringing powerful and passionate moms in Colorado together to tackle the most pressing issues facing our kids, and to bring moms into conversations with our legislators and policy leaders to be at the forefront of those efforts. Moms Fight Back was the beginning of a journey that would lead me to become a mom on a mission, a mad mom, and eventually run for governor. And because of the work I was doing with Moms Fight Back, I was invited by Governor Hickenlooper at the time in 2015 to join a newly convened school safety committee. The committee began with high hopes. It was formed after the 2013 shooting of Claire Davis at Arapahoe High School. The committee was bipartisan. It had 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans, and it was led by 2 people who had the power to get things done inside the Colorado Capitol, Democratic House Speaker Crisanta Duran and Republican Senate Majority Leader Max Schachter. Its non-voting members included a school counselor, a superintendent, a teacher, and a juvenile justice advocate. I was there representing parents in a school district. We met regularly for over a year and heard testimony from 75 different presenters. We talked about what schools could put in place and what they were already doing well. We discussed the differences between urban schools and rural schools. We had a lot of momentum. There was a lot of research, presentations, and discussions, all of which ended up going absolutely nowhere. Yes, you heard that correctly. Nothing happened. Here's an example. As part of my work on the initial 2015 committee, I put together a group of public safety, military, and school safety experts tasked with building out a comprehensive pilot program called School Safety 360 that would quickly, effectively, and affordably secure schools, train staff on de-escalation and crisis management, and equip communities to help keep their neighborhood schools safe. We met with 5 large school districts and their teams, but none of them would bite. They didn't want to bring in anyone from outside their system, but really, they didn't want to be held accountable. Finally, a Jefferson County charter school agreed to test the program. They loved it, the parents loved it, and teachers loved it. They felt empowered. I took the results to the committee and to Governor Hickenlooper, but again, nothing happened. After our last time meeting in September 26 as a committee, there was crickets. In early 2017, I sent an email to fellow members. I never heard back from the leaders of the committee. Email after email went unanswered. Our committee had adjourned in the fall of 2016 and would never meet again. We all worked so hard and came up with some great innovative ideas, and we had to just shut down. Other members of the committee reached out to legislators too. We rarely heard back, and if we did, it was dismissive. So, why did nothing happen? Well, in my opinion, the 2015 School Safety and Youth in Crisis Committee, its official name, was alive, but only on paper, likely just for political perception, to say they did something. Does that sound familiar? It formally ended nearly 3 years after its last meeting. All to show of the committee was a Twitter account that never tweeted, and a final report with nothing more than a handful of nonsense pages and a receipt for the estimated $24,826 in taxpayer money spent during its existence. Money spent on drafting bills that would never see the light of the day. Let's take a deeper look. 7 bills were drafted over the course of our committee's meetings. At the end of our 5th meeting, 4 of the 7 bills were withdrawn by lawmakers who said they needed more time to work on them. Another bill, clarifying the language of the Claire Davis Act, failed to pass. A bill that further weakened schools' immunity to lawsuits that held schools accountable to their part in keeping our kids safe, also failed to pass. Even a low-cost bill requiring schools to train their staff on handling troubled students was voted down. Oh my gosh, it was so frustrating. All of us committee members truly wanted to help the children of Colorado rather than just make a bullshit bipartisan political statement. Yet the leaders of the committee, Democrat Crisanta Duran and Republican Max Schachter, both let it die. Both sides let it die. Governor Hickenlooper didn't do squat. He ignored calls and emails from all of us. I was once again left hopeless by a system unwilling to take action to protect our kids. Fast forward several years and more school tragedies later. In 2019, the Colorado General Assembly created a new school safety committee, another one, this time following the tragedy at the STEM school in Highlands Ranch. Notice the pattern here? Once again, a committee was created to study the daunting issue of school safety after yet another tragedy had struck our state. The Arapahoe High School shooting in 2015 had launched the committee I served on, and now another committee was created with the same broad parameters to operate in. Would we finally see change? Well, let's look at the 2019 committee's recommendations and where they ended up. First, they recommended Bill E, which would create the Colorado Interagency Working Group on School Safety within the Department of Education, not public safety or law enforcement, but within the Colorado Department of Education. They extended the School Safety Committee and required certain state departments to work with a consultant to examine issues regarding school safety. This bill was passed, so we've got another committee. The committee requested legislation to provide funding to local education providers to improve security in schools. The committee also considered an increase in funding for schools and public safety communications networks. Neither of these requests were approved. They wouldn't put their money where their mouth was. The committee requested a bill to allow a search order to obtain reports from Safe to Tell, an anonymous reporting platform for students and teachers in certain criminal cases. This request also was not approved. The committee recommended a bill concerning excused absences in public schools resulting from behavioral health concerns and studies, lots more studies, and lots more meetings. This bill was passed, but by the legislature, we have seen no action taken since. In 2020, Republican State Senator Larry Crowder introduced a bill requiring school district safety plans for every single school with the help of security experts. In line with history, what do you think has happened since it passed? Nothing. It's dead. Now a new bill is in process, SB 23241, to create another Office of School Safety, along with more bureaucracy to administer school safety grants. Another bill that does nothing to secure schools or keep kids safe now. As Albert Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, with our kids' lives at stake. Well, this is a textbook case of insanity, in my opinion, and it's only getting worse. Fast forward to today. Democrats have a supermajority. They have every statewide office and majorities on most school boards. Governor Polis has incredible influence and power. Why don't his buddies at the teachers union raise hell? Don't they care about the safety of the teachers? 2 of their own were just shot at Denver East. None of them are doing anything to make our schools safe, to keep our teachers and administrators safe, to keep our kids safe. Parents, it is up to us. No one is coming to save the day. It is on us to either pull our kids out of public schools to keep them safe or put such tremendous pressure on the politicians and school administrators that they have to act. Take my friend Max. His son attended a school in a Florida district that had a policy similar to a proposed Colorado legislation. Broward County, now Policy 5006, allowed students convicted of serious crimes to go back into their classroom and strongly encouraged principals not to report incidents to law enforcement. So what happened as a result of Policy 5006? On the surface, it was incredible. Crime statistics in schools went down dramatically because they weren't being reported, and the superintendent became a rock star, speaking all over the country in support of their new restorative justice program. Because of this new policy, between 2014 and 2017, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School reported 0 incidents of bullying, harassment, physical attacks, threats, and intimidation to the Florida Department of Education. That's right, 0. Now that's progress, right? Of course, there's the other thing that happened. A student accumulated 55 disciplinary incidents. The assistant principals at that school didn't have him arrested. They instead decided to ban him from bringing a backpack to school because they worried he'd bring a weapon to school and do something horrific. And that's exactly what this monster did. He walked into Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School and shot 34 people. 17 people were murdered. One of them was my friend Max's son, Alex. The evil young killer at that high school was even able to legally buy a gun at 18 because school officials chose not to refer his criminal behavior to the police. They didn't have to, based on this policy. School counselors actually stopped a referral for an involuntary psych evaluation by the school resource officer. So in a state with a tragic history of school shootings, our Colorado state legislature recently tried to pass the same type of policy that removed all consequences and discipline for students committing acts of violence. Governor Jared Polis even touted this bill in his State of the State that year. Let that sink in. Our governor and legislature wanted to pass a bill here in Colorado that would make it more likely a horrific tragedy would happen again to our children. And there's more. Another terrifying bill was introduced a couple sessions ago that would go a step further. Yes, further than that monstrosity of a bill. SB 21062 would have gotten rid of bail requirements for many serious crimes, including domestic violence, sex crimes, and arson. It would have asked sheriffs to keep their jail population as low as possible, and it would have stopped police from being able to arrest people for various felony crimes, including sexual exploitation on a child and assaulting a first responder. This in a time when crime numbers are going through the roof in Colorado. Instead, Denver Public Schools pulled school resource officers out of schools. And while the governor stood by and let that happen, Denver East had a lockdown every day for 3 weeks. And following the most recent shooting, Polis hasn't had a press conference or used his bully pulpit or his millions of dollars that he had no problem with spending in the campaign this last week to do anything. Nada. Zip. Zero. He hides in his Boulder house and takes comfort in his kids attending an exclusive private school, or touts spending precious dollars to the tune of $65 million on electric school buses instead of school safety. It's time to change the political climate. Put so much pressure on the system that the wrong people will have to do the right things, finally. Hit them in their pocketbooks. Pull your kids out of the schools, and the money goes away from the teachers' unions. Teachers, start a micro school. Help homeschool families. Go to work for a private school that care about your safety. It's time for us to do something. Our children are in danger, from the violence to the drugs, the crime, to the pathetic administrators and school board members that don't have the guts to harden our schools. If our schools and lawmakers wake up, there are so many great solutions available. Systems like Evolve's Express that is far more effective than metal detectors. It enables students, parents, employees, and guests to enter a campus at a regular walking pace. It does this by using sensors and artificial intelligence to distinguish everyday metal items from the weapons that can be used to commit these attacks. Then there's Smart Data Dashboard that tracks and alerts school leadership if students are showing signs of distress through declining grades, absenteeism, and discipline issues. Then Beverly Kingston is an incredible expert right here in Colorado at CU Boulder, where she leads a group that has the Blueprints platform, an inventory of proven programs that work for school safety. Max Schachter, who I mentioned, created Parent Dashboard in Florida that is being launched in many other states that forces schools to give parents school violence data so they can push for change and make a good decision about whether to keep their kids in the school. There's Zero Eyes, a military-trusted technology that uses already installed school cameras and artificial intelligence to spot firearms before they are in the school and alerts administrators, teachers, and law enforcement within 3 seconds. Laura Carno has her FASTER training. She trains willing school staff to arm themselves and be ready when an attack happens. Nicole and Sandy Hook Promise have their Start with Hello and Save Promise clubs that bring students together and address the loneliness and isolation that can lead to school violence. The solutions exist. There are no excuses. We just need willing politicians and administrators. We need ticked off parents. We need mad moms. And don't buy their BS that they need more money to fix this. How about they stop pouring money into more administrators and more research and studies? How about we fire some of those administrators and use their bloated salaries to fix our schools and keep our kids safe? America has never spent as much money on school safety as we are right now. For the first time in our nation's history, America's schools have become the most likely place to encounter youth victimization and violence. America's current approach to school safety is making the situation worse. With more resources, money, and attention than ever before, America's focus on school safety should cause the situation to improve. Instead, we're not only failing to make the situation better, but current efforts appear to be making the situation worse. Hello, Denver School Board. As statistics around violence increase, teen suicide is increasing, and students are feeling increased depression, anxiety, and fear at school. It's time to figure out a better approach to achieving school safety, which all our schools can access and afford. In conclusion, our efforts towards reversing the trends of rising school violence rates have never been more critical than they are today. As violence towards our kids now happens more at school than anywhere else, the state of Colorado and Americans everywhere face a terrifying prospect. Our nation's schools have become one of the most dangerous, stressful, and destructive environments a parent can send their child. No one understands this reality more than John and Maria Castillo. Their amazing son, Kendrick, died a hero at the STEM high school just a few miles from where we sit, just a few short years ago. I want you to hear firsthand from John and Maria how this incredible tragedy has given them an opportunity to make sure that kids going forward are safe. We need to listen to those that have been most affected by these horrible, horrible crimes. Well, hello, John and Maria. I am so honored and happy to see you. I've gotten to hang out with you quite a bit on the campaign trail and learn about Kendrick and all the incredible effort you're putting forward to protect kids going forward. So I'm excited to tell our audience a little bit about Kendrick and about what you're up to today. So why don't we start with tell us about your beautiful son.
Well, yeah, Kendrick was amazing. Ever since he was a small kid, he was just always happy, friendly. I think he...
Yes. Full of energy, full of dreams.
Yeah, he loved, older people. He was attracted to them and would go over and like to listen to them. Young kids, little kids. He was really compassionate, would go over and hold their hand and try to do things with them, play, if he saw them alone or by themselves. I mean, Kendrick just had a loving spirit. And, he showed that all the way through pre-K through, his high school years. I mean, he just embraced that and ran with it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed talking to people who knew Kendrick and them telling stories about how loving and caring he was and how incredibly smart and interested he was in STEM, and he just had an incredibly bright future ahead. Tell us about that.
Yeah, he was always a curious kid. So when he was little, he had radio-controlled toys that he would, get, and they wouldn't stay together very long. He would tear them apart and make his own creations out of them. So it was getting expensive. We started to buy, more used toys, and as he grew, he just embraced that. And when it was time to start using technology, he was automatically just, enthralled with computers and things like that. And that led him to science fair, which he did very well in. He placed at state a couple of years in a row. He did really good with, I think one of them was an eddy brake current thing to, stop truckers from crashing and coming down mountains. Oh, wow. So stuff like that, and then renewable
Tell
energy.
her why he did that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he did that because we were towing a fifth wheel over Wolf Creek Pass, and we lost brakes.
Oh, no. That's not good.
Well, it was a pretty horrifying experience. Oh. So after that, Kendrick just became, passionate about trying to find a way to save lives and get trucks off of a mountain. So roller coaster braking works on regenerative electronic brakes. So he made his science fair around that, and he would do projects like that. That was just his dream. So when it was time for him to go to high school, he was in Notre Dame Catholic School, pre-K through 8th grade. Mm-hmm. And when it was time to find a high school, most of the high schools that were private Catholic schools had great sports programs, but they didn't offer much in engineering or technology. So we started to look different places, and that's how we became familiar with the STEM school. So they had engineering labs, and they had things that, just really embraced what Kendrick loved. And that was how we, ended up there.
Oh, that's great. And he grew up in Colorado, right?
Yep, born and raised here in Colorado, St. Joseph's Hospital.
That's where Tori, my daughter, was born.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's where he was born. And I remember when we brought him home, it was around St. Patrick's Day, and the parade was going on. And I think of that now when, they have those celebrations downtown in that area. Just, native-born Coloradoan.
Well, he sure was a light in so many people's lives, and he continues to be. The work that you're doing has just been incredible, and I know it's been a very, very treacherous path to try and make change here in Colorado.
Boy, has it. It's been tough, Since this shooting and all the shootings that have followed, there's just so much work to be done, and there's so much focus that we need to look at. And so many missed opportunities, to be quite frank.
John, tell us about what happened that day. And, Kendrick's known as a hero. He's just incredibly admired, and he's such a role model for kids across Colorado.
Yeah. May 7th should have been like any ordinary day for us. It was just, there was 1 week before graduation, was 3 days before the end of the school year. And we were all at home in the morning. Maria was off from work, and she cooked us a fantastic breakfast, and we were together. And at the time we lived in southwest Denver, so the drive was probably about 14 miles to the STEM school. I work in the Denver Tech Center, so Kendrick and I would leave and we would go in kind of the same direction. But that morning, the sun was out, it was nice, and Kendrick was dressed in his favorite hoodie. He always wore a hoodie, cargo shorts, and he'd grab his backpack with his technology, and, he'd be out the door to school. So Maria walked us to the door before I left for work and Kendrick for school, and Kendrick went to get in his Jeep, and I took the last photograph I have of Kendrick was him driving away in his Jeep. And I normally wouldn't have done that, but we put some tires on there, and he had a lifted Jeep Cherokee that he was proud of, and he would four-wheel with. And he wanted to show his friends his tires. He was just excited about them. So I snapped a picture when he was driving away, and he crested the corner. And little did we know that would be the last time that we saw Kendrick alive, and Maria watched from the front door as he drove away. And our day was pretty normal. I was at work, and it was around 2:30. I looked at the clock, and I'm like, geez, this is, it got busy. I need to take lunch. So, I left the hotel where I work, and I walked over to a local Chick-fil-A restaurant. I was sitting in there. And, I get a phone message, so I look at it, and it's a coworker. And he's saying, what school does Kendrick go to? Doesn't he go to the STEM school? And I just typed back, yes. And then he typed back to me, and he said, active shooter. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I said, no, it can't be. And I left, and I, ran back to the hotel where I work, and I went into a room where there was a television, and I kicked on the TV, and I was calling Maria, and I told her, and she's like, no, that can't be right. She said, that would never happen. And I said, well, it's on TV. We should take a look. And she did. And they were telling us to meet at Northbridge Recreation Center for the reunification site. Mm-hmm. So we both agreed that we would meet there. And I started to drive from the tech center towards the STEM school down Arapahoe Road. And I remember it was starting to drizzle and rain, getting cloudy, and just I was panicking. Anxiety was building. And I was thinking about calling Kendrick, but I was thinking if he was hiding, I didn't want to let the killers know where he was, or killer, or whoever was there threatening the school. So I held back for a while, and then I couldn't resist, and I made the phone call, and he didn't answer. And I tried texting, and the text didn't come back. He didn't answer the text. So one thing he didn't like was FaceTime. He said, Dad, that's creepy. Don't do that. I FaceTimed him and hoping that he would pick up, and nothing happened. And, all this anxiety was building as we were driving there. And then I thought, well, maybe it's just because all the phones are being used. There's no communication right now. When I got to the recreation center, I parked in a neighborhood and climbed a small pony rail fence and went down to the rec center. And I can see that people were greeting their kids, and there was fire trucks and ambulances and news media everywhere, people with umbrellas. And I was looking for Maria, and hoping she would get there soon. And just walking through these mounds of people. I went in, and they're hugging their kids, and little kids coming off the buses, and embracing their parents. And I was asking some kids I knew, I said, have you seen Kendrick? No, we haven't. We don't know where he's at. And as we were waiting, my phone was getting ready to die. So, it's a lady at the desk helped me plug it in, and I finally met up with Maria. We were there. And then I got a message saying, Mr. Castillo, Kendrick rushed the shooter.
You got a message as a text message?
Yeah, as a text message from one of his friends. Well, first I was asking him through Slack. We used an application, Slack, for a robotics competition. So I said, report out. So they were saying, yeah, we're okay. And so, And I'm like, has anybody seen Kendrick? No. And then I get the message that he'd rushed the shooter. And then I ran into another friend of Kendrick's, and they said, well, we think that they took him to a hospital. So Maria and I, there were law enforcement, different agencies all over. So I just grabbed somebody and I said, we're looking for a son. His name's Kendrick Castillo. And the police officer said, what'd you say your name was? I said, we're looking for Kendrick Castillo. And they pulled us into a racquetball court. I remember that. We were in there for a minute. And they said, we were told that he might be at a hospital. And they said, we're going to get a car. We're going to take you to Littleton Adventist, because that's where we were told he might be. So they said, don't worry about anything. We'll take you through metal detectors and get you in there and see where your son's at. So they did. We went in the police car. We walked in. And I'll never forget, we went to the nurse's station, and the police officer said, these folks are looking for their son. His name's Kendrick. There were 3 or 4 people behind the nurse's station, and they kind of looked at each other, and then they looked at him, and she said, well, he's not here. And he goes, okay. And then
And then I asked her, can you check the other hospitals? And she told me, no, they're not going to tell me anything.
Right. Yeah, that's what happened. And then, she leaned in and spoke to the police officer. And there was a whisper there. And Maria was saying, what's going on? What's happening? I'm like, I don't know. And he said, well, folks, hold on. He said, I'm going to take you around the corner here. We need to go to the small room for a minute. He said, we're trying to figure this out. So we followed him. And then a chaplain showed up, a detective, and another police officer, and we're in this small waiting room. And they said, can you describe your son and what he was wearing? So we did. Cargo shorts. He had on a hoodie, when he left home this morning. And they said, did he have any tattoos or piercings or anything like that would definitively identify him? We said, no, of course not. They said, he had Ray-Ban reading glasses on. And the detective closed her book, and she said, I'm sorry. And I'm like, that's when we knew that and Maria wanted to see him. She's like, can you take us to him? And they said, no, we can't, because he's part of the crime scene. He's still in the school. And we were never able to see Kendrick until over a week later, when he was in the funeral home after the coroner was done with him. So that was the worst day of our lives. To this day, when the rain comes down, it just takes me back to that moment, because when we were at the rec center before they took us to the hospital, the sky just opened up. I mean, it rained hard. And, I think of that. I think of, is that when Kendrick was leaving us? Is that when he was gone and still in that school? But we were driven home that night after a meeting. We met with people at the hospital, right? Down on the second floor, they opened up a meeting room. And there were engineering teacher and kids and people. Food started to pour in. And, people were saying how sorry they were, and they were crying. And I don't even know how much time passed. It was just such shock. And finally we were getting ready to leave, and I remember a kid reaching up and grabbing my hand, and he said, you're Kendrick's dad, right? And I said, yeah, I am. And I said, he goes, he helped me with algebra. And I thought that was funny, because, Kendrick really struggled with math, but we paid for tutors, and he did good. He grasped it. But not only did he grasp it, he shared and helped somebody else. And that was so Kendrick. We walked out of there and we left. We were driven home from the hospital. We left our cars. Somebody took us home, and Maria and I sat on the sofa the whole night. We never slept. We cried. We were in shock. We were waiting. We were thinking that we're going to hear his Jeep pull up in the driveway, and everything is just going to be a bad dream. But that didn't happen. It's the morning came and there were police out parked in front of our house and news media people, and one thing just led to another, and that's how the event played out. And in all that trauma, we never heard from the superintendent of Douglas County Schools or the principal or the director of the school.
Oh my goodness.
No one. So, and we didn't even, to be honest, we didn't even know it at the time. It took a while for us to realize that wasn't taking place. And then, of course, after that, there was our best experience that we could have had was our victim's advocate that helped us. We weren't thinking about planning on burying our son or finding a place for him to rest or having to pick out a casket. And those are decisions that, she was there to help us with while we were grieving and trying to figure all this out. And not to mention meeting George Brockler and hearing about the killers, and then having to interview if we had known them or had ever seen them, and all these different things with law enforcement. There were so many things that were happening all around us. It's a tragedy no parent should have to ever experience.
No, and I'm so grateful you're speaking about it so that parents understand how serious this is and how it can happen to any parent.
It can. Yeah. I mean, we were mentors in the school with the robotics team, and we got there after school ended. In our group, we didn't see anything with the kids that we were mentoring. We never realized that the problems that existed there and the danger that we were in. Had we would have made different choices. But people who believe that this is only a suburban problem where there's drugs or neglect or whatever, and it doesn't happen in urban schools, that urban schools deal with different types of violence, that rural communities aren't impacted. They're all wrong. It can happen anywhere. And we need to take a stand on addressing the issues to minimize these things.
John and Maria, how has this been politically? I know it's such a politicized issue right now, and when you speak up, you probably get pushed to one side or the other, or you get tagged either way. How does that impact the change you're trying to make or the fight that you're taking on right now?
Well, we took the trail less traveled in all of this. People come out after these events, and they want to politicize it. They want to use it for their agendas, for things like gun control. And right off the bat, we refuse that because we know that those things, you can't litigate against evil. That's the thing. And you have to understand that not all of this is always mental health. I mean, mental health is an important thing to have a conversation about. But it's definitely not about guns. In our case, when we went through the criminal trial, the guns were locked up. There was safe gun storage. So all of these things that you hear, this now in our local bills that are being passed, this waiting period and different things wouldn't have made a difference. Mm-hmm. Criminals broke into a gun safe. They got the guns illegally. They took them from a household. So those things need to be talked about, and we need to look at the root cause of the problem, not the political angles, but the things that are really going to make a difference to keep schools safe.
Do you think if parents had better information about the violence that's happening in the schools, the lack of safety, that they would make different decisions?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, Maria and I have come to find out it's been over 4 years, and as we look at these things and through digging in, that's part of our daily life, is every day that we're looking for things to see how they could have been better. And what we found out is, let's be very honest with each other. School is a business. It gets marketed and replicated It grows. If you can produce great students and you have AP classes and you're taunting graduation rates and where kids are going and how they're going to be successful, all of those things are talked about. Even with our sports teams on universities and certain high schools, it's there to attract you. It's a marketing tool. It's the candy that draws you in. But what you don't hear about is the problems that exist within the environment. You'll never hear about the drug use or the violence, the rape, the assaults. Those things get kind of hidden. You know, you can go on Canvas or whatever network people use to check grades for their kids, but you can never go on there and see how much bad stuff has gone on and if it's risen to the level of a threat that is reported to the police. I mean, it's just not there for families to make that educated choice. And I'm not saying they need to know the details of the event. They just need to know that it's risen to a point that it's serious, and you might not want to have your child in that school. And it's really that simple. But we can't even get to that point where we can, get these things put into our schools so that families can see them.
That's what's been shocking to me in the governor's race or on the I was on the school safety committee with Hickenlooper's term, and just the lack of interest in providing transparency. It's like pulling teeth to get any information out of the schools. Even when I was on that committee, even when I was a governor candidate, even as a regent at the University of Colorado, I'm one of 9 fiduciaries for the entire university system, and I would get fluffy PowerPoints talking about how everything was wonderful. And the minute you dig into the data, if you could get the data, it tells a whole different story. And you're right, it is a marketing machine. And that is a shame. That is not okay for parents and families.
No, it isn't. It isn't. And it's a dangerous thing to put out there, to keep going down that road. And we've seen, like, school administration grow. Looking at something since 1970, our teachers in our schools have really shrunken down, and there hasn't been a lot of growth there. We haven't grown in the teaching avenue of it, but the administrative side of it has blossomed and bloomed. And the salaries and the money involved are just crazy. But we're not putting that back into safety plans or doing anything to protect the teachers or the students.
No, and in fact, we were just talking about the working group getting together. There was a hiatus of a few years where there wasn't any meetings about school safety or the committee. Ours was disbanded. We were supposed to go 3 years. We did 1 year of meetings, and then it was like, okay, thanks for your service, see ya. We're like, wait, what? We were supposed to do some things. Right. And then it kind of just stalled, and now, there was the tragedy at Denver East and watching what's happening in Nashville, and all they're talking about is creating another study committee or putting together another research paper. It's like, for goodness sake, just do something. Do something.
Right. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There's simple things we can do. And you need to talk to the people who are most involved and see the problem. Some of that's law enforcement, SROs. After the shooting, I've had no less than 3 people from different agencies come to me and say, one big problem that we have are having open campuses. There is so much like theft and crime and drug use that takes place over a lunch hour. And I wasn't even aware of that, but that was brought to my attention by people in law enforcement. They're like, if you really want to shut some of this down, make sure that doesn't happen.
Well, that's just a no-brainer.
Right.
We all grew up having to stay on campus and eat our lunches, and it's good for community and talking to each other. Okay, so there's lots of things we can do to fix this. Why isn't there the political will or the will of the administrators to fix this stuff?
Well, because I think they're afraid that the accountability portion of it is going to be damaging to the growth of whatever they're trying to do as far as replicating schools or being successful. They're afraid that if they embark on making the right changes, it's going to come back and personally haunt them if there's an event, which I totally disagree with.
Yeah, losing a student or a child is not is better. That's ridiculous.
Exactly. I feel that if you're doing everything that you can possible to make sure that your students and your staff are safe. When an event happens, it's just a really bad event, and you've done everything that you can, and there's honesty there, transparency. That's really what it's for. It's to make sure that that is taking place. It's that simple, but you know, people are afraid to get into that arena. Even some working groups who are trying to come up with solutions will have the disclaimer down there that, you know, in the event of an actual thing, you know, that they don't want to have liability. And we can't have that. I mean, we have to have people who are going to be responsible for the actions.
Boy, that's the truth. And I mean, I was put on that committee because Claire Davis lost her life at Arapahoe High School, and they put forward the Claire Davis Act, her parents did. And that created the committee. And one of the things we were supposed to do is create a standard of care, which we didn't do. And so fast forward, this law that was passed is actually allowing you to try and get some transparency into what happened to Kendrick. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about that. So the Claire Davis law is something that, you know, Colorado is very lucky to have, I'll just say first of all. And I can't tell you how grateful we are to the Davis family, to Michael and Desiree Davis for fighting so hard to get that law passed. It's important because a school is a public school is a government entity, and they can hide behind government immunity. Now, you know, we found out through all of this the reason that we weren't being talked to right away is because lawyers got involved right away, and they shut down all of the school administrators from, you know, talking to us and everything because they're trying to protect themselves and trying to cover up whatever they had known, which we weren't privy to until we entered into the Claire Davis Act to be able to get that information. So we had to fight to, you know, we had to pay legal fees and fight legally to get into the Claire Davis Act in order to get the information that we needed to find out how it led up to Kendrick losing his life in the STEM school. And we know of a few things, and one of them is that there wasn't an investigation done, just the police investigation on the shooting itself, but they never investigated themselves. That's something Maria and I had to do to even get the information that we needed to start with depositions and things like that. So, you know, thank goodness for the Claire Davis Act and bill. We're currently now at a point where, you know, we receive depositions, but we're not able to talk about what we've discovered. And that's been, you know, I can share that with you because it's already been in print. I mean, it's out there that we're being harnessed. You know, it's our First Amendment right, our freedom of speech, to be able to get what we've learned and share it. Mm-hmm. And we're not able to do that due to the fact that there was case law from a hospital where they were able to force a payout onto a client, and they're using that in the same context that we should just take the maximum amount under the Claire Davis law and go away with whatever we have and not have our day in court. So they're still hiding things. So, you know, we can't get to transparency and honesty of what takes place in schools if we can't share it with the public and people and communities.
Wow. Where does it stand right now? Where, like, who is holding up moving forward, or are they? Is it just a time game?
Well, it's a time game right now. There's a special master that is overseeing what confidentiality is allowed, and that's kind of what we're waiting for. We're waiting to see what gets ruled on.
John, what's a special master?
A special master is a retired judge who comes and oversees all of the evidence that's been presented and works with the attorneys, us and the school, to try to figure out how we're going to proceed. And we're still very early in all of that, so we don't know. We just have to wait and see how, you know, they rule on certain items as we go forward. It's kind of unknown because nobody's ever been or used the Claire Davis Act. We're the first ones.
And if a decision's made that isn't fair, can you take it to the Colorado Supreme Court, or can you take it further?
Yeah, we can appeal and we can keep going. Okay. You know, we can stay in the fight, and we vowed to do that. You know, Maria and I, we were talking with another person in media, and it's like, this is our lives going forward. If we have to do it from underneath the bridge, if we're homeless or whatever we have to do.
We will make sure that doesn't happen. I have lots of dogs and kids, but you can hang out at our house.
You never know. I might have a propane heater and be with the rest of the city of Denver, but fighting a different charge.
We have a fifth wheel,
good.
We can live there.
So, we're into it for the long haul. And, I mean, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but Kendrick's our only child. I mean, we have nothing else. I mean, he was everything. We poured everything into him. And May 7th, it was taken away, and just to have people still not want to tell you about the facts leading up to how he lost his life is not acceptable. And we're not willing to accept that.
Well, know that all of us parents that have kids in school or grandkids, we are so, so proud of you and your courage. And I can't tell you thank you enough for doing this. And
well, thanks for having us on your podcast. It's important that we get out what we can in any format to anybody who will listen, because they too are at risk. I mean, right now it's bad enough that I think if you have your kids in public school, you should think twice about keeping them in there, unless you're asking key questions. And those questions should be, what are you doing to protect our students? What are you doing to protect your teachers? What's a budget look like for security? Boy, talk about some transparency there. I bet parents would never ask that. They can go to their school boards and ask, what kind of money is being spent? I think you'd be surprised. And I'll say this, the I Love You Guys Foundation, the Emily Keys family, they've done a great job creating safety protocol, and they've made it available for free because they have such kind hearts. In some ways they're being taken advantage of. There's some new startups, new schools, new charters who will just take that information. And, that is good information as a starting point, but you have to invest more in security. You can't just use that. We have to have safety plans that involve budgeted amount of dollars and how we're going to go forward and continue to protect kids.
Well, and one of the things that I noticed when I was on the school safety committee and worked in school safety after that was the lack of involvement of law enforcement and public safety officials. It's like you can't expect school administrators to know how to harden a school or how to protect children in a frightening situation like that. They aren't trained to do that.
Right, they're not. And there's some truths there that need to be told too. We support SROs and law enforcement. Maria and I are their biggest supporters. Whether it's financially or going to rallies or doing whatever. I mean, there are people. We love them. We support them in our schools. But there is some things to consider there. And some of that is contracts that are up to $80,000 for a single SRO, making it affordable. We can't get into school safety where it becomes profitable for any type of entity, whoever it is, whether it's technology or an SRO. So that's a problem. The other one is they're uniformed and identified. Now as I watch what's going on at East High School, this pathway from schools to pipeline to prison is a bunch of BS. I mean, if you really wanted to remove SROs from a Denver school or something, why wouldn't you bring in armed school staff that's not policing, but they're still there for security? Those things exist, but nobody talks about that. There's a few things that, there's quite a few things that people don't talk about, but that's one of them. And, a uniformed officer is great in a lot of ways with younger kids and in schools. It creates a relationship that down the road is going to be good for citizens so that they trust law enforcement. So there's positives to it. The negatives to it are they're uniformed and they're identifiable. They know when they leave. They're shared between schools. They drive a car that they can see in the parking lot. I mean, we need to have security that's in our schools that nobody knows about, that's ready when an event happens. And we need to look at those options.
That's a good point. And I'm sorry, your story's been amazing. And I'm pretty engrossed, so I forgot to ask you what I ask all my guests, like what is one truth and one lie that you want the public to know? So we've talked a lot about different truths and lies, but...
Yeah, I think that one lie is that parents are not getting all of the data that they deserve when it comes to threat assessments and mental health assessments in their schools. That's not happening. I think that gun control is not the answer. That's another lie. I'll put two in there. I'll mix them together.
That's totally fine. There's plenty of lies to go around.
Yeah, so those are two of the big ones. Those are two of the big lies that we need to get past. And then, the truth of the matter is we need to look at solutions now that can be implemented in our schools. The truth is that they're there. They're just not accepted or being pushed forward to create safe schools. I mean, they can do it tomorrow for little money to get some of these things that we've talked about rolling, but it's the unwillingness.
Or they could let go of some of the administrators.
Right.
and use that money
Absolutely. They can
in a more effective way.
They can pay for it that way. I've had many ideas about how we can afford to pay for armed staff in schools. And, we were in robotics, and you have to pay for supplies. If you have an art class, you pay for supplies. If you have a sports team, I think it's a small amount for somebody to be able to front, and there's nonprofits that can pick up the rest to make sure that our schools are safe. And like you're saying, the easy one is just cut back some of these administrative positions that aren't needed and use that money for security.
And there's always the good old PTA bake sale.
That too.
Yeah, I mean, parents, I think once they start learning the truth about what's happening, they will rise up and they will say, is money the problem? Great, we'll take care of it. Or a nonprofit can step in and take care of it. Is mental health the problem? Okay, we'll step in, we'll take care of our kids, our families. But you've got to share that information with us, Mr. School Administrator, so we know what we're dealing with.
Well, yeah, they can do, in our line of business with hospitality and lodging, we do remodels and renovations based off of escrow. So whatever money is being saved goes into an account and doesn't get touched. I mean, you can create escrow accounts for schools that would be there for school safety, and you would never know it. It would just keep growing. Once it gets fed, it would just keep growing and growing, and it would just be a normal thing. It would be that simple. So those are simple solutions that we can come up with as far as financing it. We just have to have the willingness to be able to do it.
And at this point, I don't see the administrators standing up to do that. I don't see the politicians, the school board members standing up to do it. So it's going to have to be the parents.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Parents have to decide what is enough. I think we're seeing it all around us today that, these soft targets, gun-free zones are not working. I mean, we protect our financial institutions, our festivals, sporting events, the Super Bowl. I mean, there's boats and there's helicopters, there's everything. Our school boards. When I go to testify at a school board, there's 3 or 4 armed officers there to harness parents to make sure you don't get out of control. But yet they're not in our schools protecting our kids. And I mean, people need to open their eyes and see these things. See them for what they are. That's the reality of where we're at today. It's America.
Well, that's the truth, John. Maria? John, when I first met you for coffee a few years ago, you talked about how important it was to change the law so that we change the designation of these school shooters. Tell me about that.
Right, yeah, it's super important. School shootings, should be considered acts of domestic terror for a couple of reasons. And the most important, when people ask me why I believe that, it's because in the courtroom it really matters. When we go through, especially when you're dealing with juveniles in crimes, when there's intent to kill and commit mass murder, under the United States Patriot Act, if we tried these things as domestic terror, they would be tried in a federal court, not a juvenile court. And any money that goes to a public school from the government would link it, I believe, some way to being a government building, which they are. So, if there's money that's being funneled to schools, you're protecting that government building. And what we've seen in Oklahoma City when there was the bombing with Terry Nichols and Terry Nichols and Timothy McVeigh, they were tried and put to death for that crime of domestic terror. But yet we don't do it when there's mass shootings in our schools. And we need to address that. And I think, just relabeling it to an act of domestic terror is going to put focus on that. And that is something that we brought up to Governor Jared Polis, and it fell on deaf ears. And we never got the opportunity to talk to
Phil Weiser.
That's right, Phil Weiser about it. We made an appointment and we got blown off. He sent a staffer but never met with us, even though we had an appointment with him to talk about that. But that was the very first thing with the governor and at the Capitol that we discussed, is changing it to an act of domestic terror. And we can do that on a state level. That doesn't have to be on a federal level,
Really?
just so we get that designation. Huh. But it never happened. I would definitely like to see that happen because I think it matters.
I definitely agree. I think that whatever help you need to get that done, let's keep the conversation
When we look
going.
at the designation of a mass shooting by being for more by the FBI, the STEM school shooting doesn't even pop up on the radar because Kendrick was the only one who lost his life. He saved everybody in the classroom in 107, and who knows how many others in the STEM school. But it's just counted as a shooting. It doesn't even go up as a mass school shooting or anything like that because of the lives that he saved. If there was a body count of 4 or more, then it would. And, an act of domestic terror is important, that we designate these things correctly so we can fix these problems.
Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I just admire the heck out of you and so grateful to have our friendship, and I've learned so much from both of you and from Kendrick.
Well, thank you. We were fighting for you for governor, and we know that had you gotten that spot, you'd make the changes needed. And we admire you for continuing to fight.
Thank you. Well, we're all in this together, and we've got a great little angel up there helping us do this fight. So I appreciate you, and we'd love to have you back anytime. Well, hello, Max. I'm so glad to connect. I know you're very busy doing a lot of interviews about the Nashville tragedy, but I wanted to give you a chance to tell our audience about the incredible work you've done on the dashboard, and also a little bit about your story and your amazing son, Alex, if that's okay.
Absolutely. It's good to see you again, Heidi, and be part of Unleashed. This is great.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about Alex.
Alex was a 14-year-old little boy that loved Nutella crepes, and he loved the New England Patriots and the Boston Celtics, and I'm sitting in Alex's room. I love sitting in his room and being with his spirit and his memory. And so Alex was 14 years old when I sent him to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, expecting for him to come back to me and my wife, like he had every other day. And they let the school let a murderer walk through an unlocked, unstaffed gate outside the school that they had opened prior to dismissal, let him walk right into building 12. The security monitor that saw him didn't stop him, didn't call lockdown, didn't call 911. And then the murderer pulled out an AR-15 and went floor to floor, killing and murdering students and staff. And then in under 4 minutes, 17 people were murdered and 17 were injured in just a matter of minutes. So, and then after that happened, I dedicated my life to doing everything I could to prevent this from happening again. And then we had Nashville, what seems like 2 seconds ago, where it happened all over again, and my heart goes out to those families of the six that were killed, 3 little just babies, 9-year-old little babies. I'm very sorry.
Well, thank you, Max. I'm sitting in Colorado, which has been a state that has experienced so many of these tragedies. And last week we had a student shoot 2 administrators that were patting him down, and he had a history of being suspect enough that they needed to pat him down every day. And it just constantly brings up these same conversations. And I am so tired of us creating committees and studying the issue and and talking about what we need to do. Why won't these politicians act on this? Why won't they do something to keep our babies safe?
Yeah, no, I wish we had the answer. After the shooting, I specifically decided to focus on school safety because, this is a nonpartisan issue. It's a bipartisan issue. And I had hoped that, I could get a lot accomplished. And we have since Parkland. More has been done since Parkland than ever before after any tragedy. So I will say that. And in Florida, we have made wholesale changes to the safety and security of all schools throughout our state. For instance, we have an armed school safety officer on every campus, every K through 12 campus. And there are 4,000 public schools in Florida where there's an armed school safety officer. We have guardians, so they're non-officers, but school personnel that after they go through a very rigorous training process from the sheriff's office can carry concealed, and they're a force multiplier. We saw what can happen when you don't have an armed officer on campus, and they were not able to stop the Nashville shooter for 14 minutes. And you leave a gunman with an AR-15 roaming around hunting the halls of your school for 14 minutes, and there's going to be dead. There's no two ways around it. You've got to, number one, stop the killing, and then you've got to stop the dying. And unfortunately, there was nobody to do that until the officers arrived. So we have threat assessment teams in every school in the state of Florida. We have panic apps in every school. We have an anonymous threat reporting system, which you have in Colorado, really the gold standard, safe to say. And we've done so much even more than that. So we've been meeting for almost 5 years. The commission that I'm on, the MSD commission, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission, and we've done a lot of good work. And it's a tribute to the great leadership that we have in this state at the highest levels, and also the chair of the MSD commission, who has not taken his foot off of the accelerator and continued to push for school safety improvements even 5 years after Parkland.
That's amazing. I am so glad to hear that that's happening, and we can use that as a model in all these other states where we don't have a lot of these protections. One of the things I'm most proud about of the work you've done, and I've watched from afar and been envious of all the things you've gotten accomplished in Florida and hoping that we can do that in Colorado, is the dashboard and transparency. Tell us a little bit about what prompted that and what you've gotten done in that regard and how we can bring that to Colorado.
Yeah, so after the shooting, every meeting that we would have, well, number one, I wanted to be on the commission because I wanted to find out what happened to Alex, and I wanted to hold those individuals accountable. But one thing that I learned was that every school in the state of Florida was required to report incidents of violence and drugs to the State Department of Education. And I have 3 other children, and I wanted to make sure that they were safe. And so in my investigation into their schools to see what their schools were reporting to the state, I found that Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, for the 3 years prior to the tragedy, were basically reporting zeros. 0 bullying, 0 threats, 0 intimidation, 0 assaults. And so the commission that I'm on really took a keen interest in that and started to hold those school districts accountable for the data and for the accuracy. And so much that we now have laws in place to hold those school districts accountable, and that if school districts are underreporting, the commissioner of education can withhold the superintendent's salary. Good. So we, Safe Schools for Alex, which is the charity that my wife and I started, when I started to delve into that data, it was basically a massive Excel spreadsheet with millions of cells of data. And my first glance at it, I'm like, what am I going to do with this? And so it was basically useless in the format that it was previously. And so that's why we created this school safety dashboard, which is housed on our website, safeschoolsforalex.org. And now every parent can go online and look at what's happening inside their school, because when I sent Alex to school, I had no idea that he was going to school with a very violent individual. But because of the dashboard, we really, it takes the blindfold off of parents' eyes and really opens their eyes to what's happening on your campus and in your kid's school when you drop them off. So the goal of the dashboard is really to empower parents, give them the information that they need to be a part of the solution to making their school safe, at the same time reducing violence, reducing suspensions and exclusionary discipline, and also creating a positive culture and climate on campus, which can only happen if you're prioritizing safety and security above all else. And I think that's really the moral to the story, is that in Florida, we get it, that we understand, and we stress this to all of our administrators, that if the kids and the staff don't make it home every day, nothing else matters. And it should not take a terrible mass tragedy in every community for people to take it seriously.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for doing that work. I've gotten to the point where I'm so over waiting for administrators and politicians to do anything about it that I've told parents, get your kids out of the schools. If your schools won't answer the questions, if they won't do the right things to keep your kids safe, then get them out of the schools. It could be life or death for them, as you all know. And I so appreciate the work you're doing, and would love to keep the conversation going about how we bring this to Colorado. I'm going to keep hammering it and talking about it and seeing if we can move the needle to get transparency here in our Colorado schools, which we need so desperately, because parents, they don't understand what's happening right now, and they aren't giving good information, and we're just running blind, and most of us are done with it. We're tired. We're tired of waiting for people to fix it. So at least give us the option to make a good decision about whether our kids are safe at school or not.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you for having me, Heidi. And if there's anything I can do, you know how to reach me.
Thank you, Max. And you're honoring Alex in such an incredible way. I'm sure he's so proud of you and shining down and rooting you on. So keep going. We're here to support you however we can.